Most of the fruit farmers depend on bees for pollination services, and there are challenges affecting the bees, such as climate change. Bees fodder. Is there any assistance offered by Sunbee? I did not see or hear any info on bees, only butterfly species were highlighted. All these species have a great impact on fruit production as well as food security.
Sunbee doesn't provide that kind of assistance. I think we broadly provide scientific advice, and our biggest users of the scientific advice is government. So it's national government and all of the provincial agencies. At the level of the bees, we are in the process of conducting an assessment on the threat status of bees. And of course, bees are managed. So the beehives, they are managed, to provide pollination services. But so perhaps just in brief, Sunbee doesn't provide services directly on matters such as bees specifically. And I'm not sure whether the ARC would. I'm not sure if there's another representative of the ARC that might be online or in the room that could potentially respond to that question as well. Thank you. Thanks for the question. I think it's a really important one.
Okay, Lundwaba has a hand up.
Yeah.
We can hear you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, colleagues, and thank you so much for such wonderful talks. I thought we were trying to work hard here on our institution, but I feel like your people are doing amazing things out there now. So I've got a question for Dr. Franz, and also I think, is it Dr. Police? I didn't get the name of the second speaker properly. So I don't know, do I just shoot all questions, or do we first deal with the first presentation and then we go to the next one? What's the order, Chair?
I think do the questions for one speaker.
Okay. All right. So, Dr. Franz, I found some alignments with your presentation. And to a point that I was wondering that how open is your department or organization for collaborations? How much collaborations do you actually do with institutions? Because I'm looking at your biodiversity, especially around plants. We've got quite an extensive research going on here at VUT around that, but we are not particularly, maybe let me just say how we look at it. So basically, we use for such things as a product development and in medicinal chemistry. So where we part of our research, we're looking at these plants, new plants, and finding if there's any activity in them towards some, for drug discovery, finding some drugs, particularly the plants that have been identified to have some potency against some pathogens. So we take these plants, we isolate these molecules, and we test their activity, and we try to see if we can actually isolate the active ingredient to develop drugs and other products. For example, another major project that we've got going on now is the cannabis project, where we're also looking at a cannabis, developing an analytical lab for cannabis, also just to give analytical assistance to cannabis farmers in the region, and also helping developing that area. So I just wanted to check briefly how open is your your organization to collaborations, how easy it is to engage with you, what other things can be realized, with working with you. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Franz, would you like to respond to that?
Yes, thank you very much for that question. And I think it's really about the bioprospecting work. And I must say, as you were talking, I was fascinated by the work that you're doing. So it would be great to get your organization's name, but we would be very open to collaboration. It depends on the nature of the collaboration as well. So perhaps I could provide my contact details and you could follow up directly with me by email, and we can have discussions about the nature of the collaboration. But just to say again that we collaborate with a very broad network of partners, we would not be able to deliver on our mandate because it's impossible for us to have all of those skills and expertise within our organization. So we collaborate quite extensively in all of our work. So collaborations are more than welcome. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Franz. Any other questions?
Yes, I'm Dr. Lopolo Kowen from Department of Agriculture in the Eastern Cape. My question goes straight to Dr. Franz. I would like to check, we are working with farmers here. So in case whereby a farmer, you find that is enclosed by a Cape aloe, and then as it will affect the current capacity of the farm. And I'm aware that a Cape aloe is one of the protected plant species in South Africa. So if you want to eradicate that, what you can do as it is protected? Thank you.
So because the Cape aloe is protected, you would need to engage with the provincial department responsible for environmental affairs. And you know, there may be a permit required if you need to remove the aloe or transfer them and so forth. But the provincial department should be able to provide you with more detailed information of what exactly could be done by the landowner.
I was wondering about the providing services to both of you. Do your organizations provide services that generate income for your institutions? Okay. Jen, you can go first.
Yes, I can start. Thanks for that question. And it is an important one, actually, you know, given the funding landscape that we find ourselves in, where the government funding actually keeps declining. However, we do not really sell anything. We do have a chemistry lab in Gqeberha, and for that particular lab, there are some charges, but that's really more on cost recovery. If people come use the lab, there are some charges that can be associated with that, but much cheaper compared to what one would pay in the private sector. We work on a number of research projects that bring us funding, but at the moment, our biggest fund, most of our funding just comes from the DSI, followed by the DFFE. So there isn't really much in terms of profit that we can say we generate from selling specific services.
Thank you for that. Dr. Franz?
Yes, so thanks again for that question. I think absolutely pertinent in today's declining public purse. So in terms of SANBI's kind of services, providing services for identification of species, So we do have herbaria in different parts of the country, and they provide the service of plant identification. And we do have national science collections, of course, of plants in our herbaria. We also coordinate the national zoological collections, also through funding from the DSI. So other services are forensic services, as I mentioned in my presentation, particularly for SAPs, when it comes to poaching of different species, and perhaps it is not clear either the poached substance is in a form that cannot be easily identified, like a powder form or a piece of something. And of course, that's the kind of forensic services that then could be provided to identify that species. Because we have national botanical gardens and national zoological gardens, of course, we have visitors that pay an entry fee, and we host many different events and concerts and so on in our beautiful facilities. So those are some of the ways within which we generate income. A lot of our research is also supported through donor funding. So we would apply to donor funders, Global Environmental Facility, GIZ, and AFD, etc. All of those kind of global funding agencies. We would apply to them for funding that supports a lot of our work. And in that way, of course, we are also able to deliver on our mandate, but not necessarily generate a profit. So we're a public entity under Schedule 3A of the Public Finance Management Act. So we're not in the business of making huge profits and operating as a business enterprise, for example, compared to CSIR.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for explaining that. That is very useful. Dr. Vapapi, I also want to ask if are we winning in terms of what we're doing to address climate change? What is your opinion of that? South Africa.
No, I think that is a very important question. And I think just in terms of South Africa, I think the first point to make is that actually as a continent as a whole, in terms of contribution to the climate change problem as it exists, we are responsible for actually less than 4% of the anthropogenic greenhouse gases that are in the atmosphere and responsible for climate change. And what that means is actually that the African continent should be focusing more on the adaptation side. I would say if we were to look at the issue of early warning systems, I think there is quite a bit of progress there because of the developments around computational resources that make it possible for us to run models with higher resolution. There are, however, challenges when it comes to the observation network, because in order to be able to predict, you need to know where am I at and then be able to produce good forecasts. So without a good observation network, that would mean you are not really able to forecast really properly. But if you've got the type of event that resulted in flooding in Western Cape last month, it's called a cutoff low system. So such systems you can actually get very well with satellite information as well as the type of models that we are running. But you only get issues if the issue, like you get this very severe thunderstorm in a localized area, the models will not do well with that particular system because of our limited observation network. But I think over and above that, when we talk about climate resilience, we also need to be talking about, being able to respond, and also be talking to issues around development. I've heard recently that there are people that just go and make sure they live, they set up informal settlements in floodplains so that they can get flooded and be moved to proper housing. So I think there are, those issues that need to be addressed, that people need to be placed where we know flooding is not going to occur.
Thank you for that.
May I add to what's been said?
Yes,
Thank
please.
you. So just in terms of SANBI, one of the big enablers that support a lot of the work for climate change adaptation, of course, is the funding agencies. And SANBI is accredited by the Adaptation Fund as well as the Green Climate Fund. And so we are responsible for administering then the funds that go towards ecosystem-based adaptation in South Africa. And of course, that's to build resilience, to be able to kind of manage our ecosystems, our use of biodiversity and so forth with all of the climate change that we are experiencing. So, you know, dealing with floods, droughts, and so forth. So that is the role that SANBI is playing at present. And we also working on our program of work around adaptation in terms of our mandate deliverables like the National Biodiversity Assessment and bringing adaptation more strongly into that assessment as well. Thanks.
Very interesting.
There was a question from
Londwab.
yeah, the one you said is DWS. So the question was if our system is integrated to DWS.
Oh, this one.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry. Homotsu asks, how is water monitoring network you're undertaking? How is it integrated with DWS? How can one access monitoring report? I think this was a question for the Water Research Commission, actually.
Okay.
Wasn't it? Or can you answer it?
Well, I can speak to our network and
Yes,
how
please
we
do.
work with DWS. All right. No, yes, a very important question. When we've got observation networks, it's important actually that we have them integrated. However, I can say at the moment, we are not sending any of our observations to the DWS for them to integrate into their system. Our data is just available on the Scion catalog. We do work with DWS. We contributed to their State of Water report of last year, where we focused on our Cathedral Peak site, the one that I said was close to the just next to Lesotho, which is an important water resource area where our results actually show that wood encroachment, like as you get forests, as you get more trees, you are actually disadvantaging the communities downstream in terms of the amount of water that becomes available to them. So we are finding that forests, for example, result in more evaporation, which means they reduce the amount of water that becomes available to the community. The water that comes actually out of there also is also being used here in Gauteng. So we do work very closely with the DWS, and we contributed to that chapter. I think it was the State of Rivers report, and we also take part in a lot of their workshops.
Oh, okay, that's good to hear. What other departments do you work with?
We are working mostly, so I think first with the DSI, because we are under them, we report through them even to Parliament. So about 80% of our funding actually comes from them. I mean, I mentioned that the 3 research infrastructures that we are hosting, with all the funding coming from the DSI. SARVA is also a project that is funded through the DSI. But we are also working with the DFFE. We help them. We have a node in Cape Town that is very strong in terms of the development of data platforms. So we developed a platform for them that is able to provide climate change information. So we worked with DFFE on that. We also are working with DFFE again on a project around marine information management systems. So we are also developing and managing a platform for them that provides that information. People come with their data and they upload around the marine sciences. We also work with Department of Basic Education, as I mentioned, because we engage with the school educators. When there was the launch of the National Science Week happened at the University of Venda. So in that weekend, we ran a training workshop, and the way we got to engage with school educators, it was actually through the Department of Basic Education. So they are the ones that got teachers. We got about 40 teachers in one room that we taught GIS to. And then with DIRCO, we also work with DIRCO. There's the Indian Ocean Rim, IORA and IORAC. We have been hosting a lot of events. Just last month, we hosted an event for them. So we also work with DIRCO. I'm probably forgetting some, but we work with a number of government departments. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mary Jane. Yes, to Dr. Franz, do you, Sunby interacts with, well, you report to DFFE, and you have wide-ranging collaborations. Are there other government departments that you work with?
Yes, so I think it's quite important that we touch on, for example, water. Water is a resource that not only we need as humans, but biodiversity also very much relies on water. So we are also working with the Water Research Commission, Department of Water and Sanitation, and others, the Development Bank of South Africa, on a huge water project. It's called Ecological Infrastructure for Water Security. And so we do have partners that we work with. There's, of course, in the agricultural space, I think it's also very important to note that some of the wildlife species also have protections under the agricultural regulations. And so it's also important to engage with them. South Africa developed a wild game meat strategy. And of course, that requires a lot of collaboration in between DFFE and DALRID. So I think, there are certainly many more partners that we engage with. Of course, with DSI and NRF, we also are engaging in terms of funding support for national collections and biobanks and so forth. So we certainly do collaborate with others and would welcome even further collaborations.
Fantastic. I certainly do get the impression that between you, you are holding the core of a wide network, and that your roles are really key in the whole system. Let me just check for a last question. We're running out of time. This question was for Dr. Humotso. Noted that they visit schools and share their technology services. There are schools that engaged in agriculture, doing various agricultural activities. Okay, I think this is a response to the previous question by Dr. Humotso. Okay, I think we'll have to leave it there. Please correspond on this on the chat or on the Q&A, and because the speakers do have access to Q&A. Londwabu, is this an old hand, or you still have got your hand up again?
Oh yes, I did. But then if we're running out of time, I do not want to delay the session though. It's just had just a few questions on the second speaker.
Okay.
But it's fine. We'll talk on the Q&A.
Can we have one? Let's have one.
Okay, so as she was speaking, I was just thinking about our physics department, but I don't know how our colleagues would have felt about the talk. But I feel like through their engagements with them, they would have liked to hear her talk. So I just wanted to hear from her how do institution get in on the action? Because you mentioned a couple of institutions that you're working with already, and I was like, why is our physics department or mathematics not part of this big action going on? So how do they actually get involved in the whole action?
Okay, no, very, very good point. I think, I mean, the point you mentioned around physics as well as mathematics is actually a very important one, because people assume we are just out there counting plants. Yes, we are counting plants, but we are doing a lot more than that, in the sense that the models that we are running actually require people with a background in maths, people that know numerical techniques. And in other parameterization schemes of the physics that we have to represent in the models, actually require people with a background in physics. That is something that I can say we've not done very well with, because in terms of the collaborators that I've got, these are people with a background in meteorology, but we have started to engage with people in physics departments. For example, I went to University of Venda and engaged Professor Eric Maluta, who is in the physics department. So we are recognizing that the reason why we've been slow with our model development, capacity, is that we are not really engaging with the right people. So we definitely need to be engaging a lot more with the physics departments as well as mathematics departments. We are very much open to collaborate. So I will share my details. In fact, I think my name, because it's shown there, even if you were to Google it, I'm pretty sure you'll be able to find my email address, but otherwise I can still share it, because we definitely want to collaborate and have a bigger program around model development. And I think if possible, even extend it beyond South Africa, so that it becomes a continental program, because, as I've mentioned, the whole African continent, nobody has developed these models that we rely on. The satellite products that we are using, all coming from people that are not on the ground. So while if you can have people that are here on the ground experiencing the issues, we become part of solving the challenges that we have, and we also build capacity.